Welcome to Emerging Franchise Brands, the podcast that introduces you to the visionary founders of America's fastest growing franchise opportunities. We'll also hear from industry pros as they share what it really takes to achieve the elusive milestone of 100 plus locations. I am your host, Frank Fiume, founder of I9 Sports, and my 20-year journey from inception to acquisition has given me a unique perspective on how to succeed in franchising. Join me as we welcome today's guest. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. On today's show, I have the co-founder and CEO of Biscuit Belly, Chad Coulter. Chad, how are you today?
Doing great, Frank. Doing great. Thanks for having me on today.
It is great having you on. We're going to talk biscuits.
I mean, is there any better topic?
I don't think so. All right, so tell us about Biscuit Belly and what makes your brand so much different.
Yeah, so Biscuit Belly is a fast casual breakfast brunch brand that we started in 2019 after a couple of other developments in the entrepreneurial space and businesses that we started up from scratch. And being from Georgia, we really wanted to do something in the biscuit world. I think it's part of every piece of the food pyramid in the South, as I'm sure you know about. But opened the first one in 2019. You order at the counter, grab a number, grab a seat. It's very full service after that. So we're running the food to you. We're bussing your tables. We're running the drinks. We have brunch-based craft cocktails. We have an espresso program. It's a very lively, fun, bright atmosphere, loud, kind of upbeat music. So we're trying to do something a little different in the breakfast world, not just your typical bacon, eggs, and pancakes, and have really been very intentional in what we've done in the branding and the atmosphere and the menu to be a little bit more unique in what I would say is a rather sometimes boring, segment. So that's what we're trying to do.
Okay, now I understand you and your wife, Lauren, aren't exactly restaurateurs in a past life. So would you share with us, what exactly did you guys do and how in the world did this thing come to fruition after your former career?
Yes, so we are both pharmacists by training. We're still hitting the dopamine receptors in the brain, right? Now it's just butter, sugar, and salt.
There you go.
Yeah, we graduated from University of Georgia. We both moved up to Louisville, Kentucky, which is where we started Biscuit Belly. And I got a job actually at a local pharmacy school. And we got the entrepreneurial itch around 2011.
Okay.
Opened up a couple of those painting and drinking places that were pretty popular back in the day, where a teacher is standing up in front of the class and you're all painting the same picture, and usually the picture gets better or your interpretation of the painting gets better throughout the night as you continue to drink wine. So we opened up two of those. They went over gangbusters. We were selling a lot of wine, obviously, because that's a big piece of that business model. And, we looked around the Louisville landscape, and it's all, as you can imagine, bourbon and craft beer. And there wasn't really a wine-focused bar or restaurant. And so we're like, okay, well, there's a gap in the restaurant or bar world here in Louisville. So like, let's do our own. Let's fill this gap. And that was in 2014. We opened up our own concept. We hired an executive chef, a sommelier in training. We had 60 wines by the glass. It was like a small plate, it's like a Southern influenced small plate restaurant, had about 70 seats. We often kid that the very first time we worked in a restaurant was the night we opened our own, just because we had zero experience in the restaurant world. So that was called Louvino, Louvino.
Okay.
And that went over very, very well. It was great. And we ended up opening 5 of those locations over 3 different states. So we had 2 in Indiana, 2 in Louisville, and then 1 in Cincinnati. And so we took this concept from, my head and grew it to 5 units in 3 states. We ended up selling that in 2020. And the bad part of 2020, not before, everyone had to stay in their homes for weeks on end, but
Right.
We sold that because we had just opened Biscuit Belly and we saw the potential that that had and how well it was doing. And we were like, all right, well, Luvino basically we're running almost 5 different concepts because every wine list is different. Every chef had their own menu.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like running 5 different things, not scalable. We thought that Biscuit Belly was definitely a more scalable model. And that was something I always had a, I wanted to do is to take something, past those 5 units and really, really grow it out,
Right.
either regionally or nationally. So here we are, and we've learned a lot. We've made a lot of changes just I wouldn't say changes, but maybe we've just a lot of refinements along the way
Sure.
in the Biscuit Belly model. So, and we just opened up location number 14, and we're about to sign a new franchise deal, potentially two more deals here in the next, maybe one this week or within the next couple of weeks. So we hope to be at about 20 or so by the end of next year, 20 open locations, and we'll see where it takes us.
Congrats. That's incredible. All right. Who came up with the name Biscuit Belly?
Well, we had a lot of different names. We probably had 80 different names that I just kept on my phone on the notes section. And I wanted it to be playful and fun. Actually, I think the person that came up with it was our previous employee who actually started with us at the painting and drinking place, who then became our marketing director at the wine bar. I think she came up with it, but we were trying to play on, a lot of people know what like a muffin top is, right? Like if you got a little bit of a belly and your pants
Sure.
are too tight, your stomach kind of feels, it spills over like the top of a muffin. So we're trying to do a play on that, but with biscuits in mind instead of muffins. So you eat a couple too many biscuits, and that's you feel a little heavy.
We've all had Biscuit Belly. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So anyway, we had a lot of different names, and ultimately we met with a branding agency here locally because we really wanted to do this the right way from the beginning, because we felt like it could have legs. And so I think we presented maybe 8 of our favorite names, and then they picked, I think, 3 or 4 of those that they felt were, I don't know, the best to move forward. They scratch things off like the Risky Biscuit,
Right.
like that may not be a good restaurant name. So yeah. And then we had 2 finalists, and then we said, look, whichever logo we like the most, that's the one we'll go with. And it's
Right.
funny because one of the names was Crumbles, and
Okay.
I'm glad we didn't choose that because
I'm glad you didn't.
we probably would have gotten sued by the cookie company, because there's a lot of lawsuits right now in that arena. But
Yes.
yeah, I think it would have been too close and probably caused some confusion.
Yeah,
but
and nobody wants their biscuit crumbling up either.
Exactly. Like it kind of has a negative connotation too. So I'm glad we didn't choose that. But yeah, so we went with Biscuit Belly, and we got the color palette picked out and the logo made, and it was pretty an interesting process that I'd never been through to do it in a very organized like fashion of coming up with a ground up.
I love it. I enjoy hearing why people come up with the names that they do, and the feeling they want to get behind it. And there's a lot that goes into it. And it's like, once you name your kid, that's it. That's the child's name. That's it for life. So you got to do it right. You got to take the time.
Yeah, I agreed. And since it was something that we felt we could, or the goal was to scale it up, we wanted something that, was a little cheeky and it was bright and fun, which is not always what you see in a breakfast restaurant, which is kind of surprising to me because that's supposed to be like, it's the morning time. You're waking up and you have your coffee or a cocktail, right, and, versus like a darker like dinner restaurant. So, I'm surprised working something like that.
All right, Chad, let's talk about the early years. 2019, 6 years ago.
Long time ago.
Yeah, right. So, like, what was life like when you first started running the company? Because this is a brand new concept for you. What were some of the challenges that you had to overcome?
Yeah, I feel like we hired pretty well for the first concept. Like we hired a guy from the wine bar that came to be our kitchen manager, and a girl that was a server that had been with us for a while was became our GM. It's a lot of little tweaks every day and just how we do things as we're figuring things out. But one of the and I wouldn't say challenges, but the executive chef that was at Luvino and was basically helped create that concept. He also created the menu for Biscuit Belly. And chefs are going to be chefs.
Sure.
We got like the free range farm, mushrooms from that are like $20 a pound from the local mushroom guy, and a really high end cheese and
Right.
this and that. And then when we get our P&L for the first time, and we're like, oh man, I thought breakfast restaurants were supposed to have a lot better food cost than this. And so, we had to kind of unchefify it, so to speak. We had to go with like a general mushroom and
Right.
maybe not the highest quality of cheeses and all this stuff. I mean, it's still very, very good, but it just wasn't sustainable with the super high quality, super uber local ingredients that we were using. And obviously you can't scale that
You
either.
can't scale a 5-star breakfast place.
Yeah. Yeah. It ain't possible. So we had to make a lot of changes there, which ultimately made our cost of goods better and like the total unit economics better. But I mean, it was really, we were very popular from day one, kind of lines out the door every Saturday, Sunday, very well received, had great reviews. So, I mean, there's always things to improve upon, but like we started off very well because I'm a very psychotically detailed planner. And so I wanted, I'm always going to make sure our ducks are in a row before we press go and that we're actually ready. So, but like now that we're scaling up, and that's just like location one, right? But now that we're scaling up, we've brought on some real talent to help us get there, people that have scaled brands before.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's been our biggest learning that we would share with others is if you're starting a startup brand, don't go out and get like the guy that's been at Cracker Barrel for 15 years or Panera for 15 years, like completely different skill set.
Right.
Go out and get people that have created something and grown something essentially from the ground up, not that just can follow the systems that are in place. They need to build the systems. And so we've built the team with very startup driven and startup experienced individuals.
That is great advice, Chad. And that could be applied not only to, that position, but to other positions in franchising for folks. Because if you're in franchise, let's say you need to sell franchises and you're an emerging franchise brand, you don't want a guy who's been selling franchises for McDonald's. It does not relate. You don't want to say, "Oh, I'm so proud I've got a guy who sold franchises for McDonald's." That it's not applicable. You want somebody who knows how to sell franchises that has sold emerging concepts because it's a different type of buyer, right? And it's no different than somebody, whether it's in operations or in any position they're there for. But also, if you think about it, also as a company that you're growing and expanding, you also want to hire talent though who has also been they're the next step ahead of you too, so that we can look to them to grow. But if they're, for example, again, back to a McDonald's where the brand has been around since, the fees, it does not compute. It just does not. It's not applicable.
Yeah. Yeah. Selling, and I hate to use word sell, but like it's essentially what we're doing.
Right. We can call franchise development or, awarding
Yeah.
franchises, but at the end of the day, somebody's selling franchises, right?
Yeah. 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 But I mean, it's a completely different buyer. You're getting more onesie, twosie, threesies, typically less sophisticated. We've been pretty lucky and who we've been able to attract that
Right.
are, very, very seasoned in the restaurant space. But yeah, those people are hard to find. And it's what every other concept is also trying to find. So you're fighting against these same few people that typically want to be involved in larger brands because you have the brand recognition and you have
Right.
the support and you have so many things figured out. And you can just contribute to a brand fund and it's taken care of for you. You're not having to
Right.
get out there and like beat the streets, at a more community level. If you have the Golden Arches or Colonel Sanders,
Right.
on your sign. So, so yeah, I definitely agree with that. We always say we want to be pushed by our people. We don't want to be pulling them
Hmm.
along. So yeah, we have brought people on that are they're change makers and they're experienced, and we know we kind of have you kind of have one shot at building a brand from the ground up,
You're right.
and uh, we see it more as an investment than an
Hmm.
expense to bring on some more experience, which typically costs more, right? So for us, it's more of an investment, and it has definitely paid off for us.
Smart. Chad, how many company-owned locations did you have before you awarded your first franchise?
Yeah, probably far too few in many people's eyes. We started, it was after the second one. So we basically did, we had two in 2019 open, one in
Hmm.
May, one in December, and then obviously COVID hit. But we felt with our business partners, huge success and experience with Papa John's and growing that brand. He was honestly very anti-franchise for a little while when we were talking about it, just because he's like, hey, man, I lived this for 25 years. It can be really good, but it can also be a pain in your butt.
Franchising
So
is not for everybody. There and people who have not franchised before, they think it's quick money, and that couldn't be any more further from the truth as a
yeah,
franchisor. And you're playing the long game.
yeah, you really are. And you always think that you yourself are going to be the exception for everything.
Of
Like,
course.
well, yeah, those horror stories that happen to all these other people, those won't happen to us. We haven't had horror stories or anything by any means, but we definitely see where it can really unravel.
Of course. Yeah, yeah, of course. Okay, so you have six franchises open now. You have eight company owned. I'm curious on your strategy. Since I talked to so many founders and they have, strategically they think about just being opening company owned, opening a dual strategy or just franchise. What are you guys doing moving forward, do you think? Because you've got a few more company owned than you do franchise. Is that by design? Do you want to keep that parallel strategy?
Well, and not to get too much in the weeds here, some of our company owned are actually more joint venture. So we manage and control them. We do
Hmm.
everything soup to nuts, but they are with outside equity, but we can buy them back at a later date. So we can either refranchise them or we can go the corporate route. But we aren't sticking to any certain numbers, percentages, or whatever. We are very opportunistic as far as continuing to grow in the right areas with the right people. I would say almost always ask that question as
Hmm.
like when people we're just talking to either on a podcast or whatever. But we started to do these joint ventures because we had people that wanted to be involved in the brand, but they didn't have any interest or any knowledge maybe of running restaurants, but they still really liked what we were doing. And so it was like more friends and family deals. But that allowed us to continue to grow, validate the brand in other markets, continue to improve operations, continue to open more stores, get PR, all these things eventually will help us hopefully get more traction on the franchise side.
Hmm.
But and quite honestly, like this is a super naive thing that I thought, but I thought we would turn the franchise light on and the phone would just start ringing off the hook, right? But
Don't we all?
yeah, I mean, I think that's what everyone kind of thinks because you think your brand's going to be better than every other one out there. But even if it is, you still have to go out and sell that story. And
And also, slow and steady wins the race, not to award
yeah,
too many franchises too soon.
exactly. Yeah, we've been very diligent and careful with who we've brought on. One of the original Raising Cane's franchisees told me, you don't want to be a paper company. You don't want to go out and just sell a bunch of deals and sell paper essentially because, your first franchisees will dictate, and the success that they have or lack of success will
Hmm.
dictate what your future looks like.
Absolutely. It's
And
a
so,
ripple effect. It will impact you for
yeah,
years to come. Those first
yeah.
dozen are critical.
Yeah. So we've been really careful. And by doing the joint ventures, by bringing on and waiting on kind of the right franchisees to join, our AUVs have gone way up. We've gotten so much better in opening restaurants, operating restaurants, supply chain, marketing. I mean, just the whole thing. The stores that we open now look way different, both physically and just like the numbers within them than the first few did.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have a magic number to answer your question. If we can continue to raise money, build these corporate/JV stores, we'll do that. If good franchisees come along, we'll do that. I know, they're very different business models, but at the end of the day, you're operating restaurants. So
Sure.
you're operating the same restaurant. So it's either, are you supporting someone and are you influencing their decisions, or do you have a direct impact on the decision making like you would a corporate store, and it can hire and fire and all that. So it's a matter of influence, but again, at the end of the day, we're making biscuits,
Right.
we're
Well,
hopefully making people happy.
Chad, what makes a great territory? I mean, it's biscuits, it's breakfast. I could see how this would work anywhere, yet you've got 14 locations in 6 different states. So you're evidently trying different markets. Have you figured out, is there a particular market that works better? Or has this been just by chance the best people who've come forward that wanted a location?
Yeah, I think we look from a demographic standpoint, we have not fared as well in more blue collar areas. So we are traditionally looking for slightly larger cities. So that's why you see us in Atlanta, Charlotte, Raleigh, the Virginia Beach area, Louisville, at least a couple 100,000 people or more. You're not going to get the density with our brand that you would Jersey Mike's or McDonald's or something like that. Like, we're more that kind of specialty, maybe cheat day, treat, special occasion, whatever you want to call it. Versus like your everyday sandwich or, hamburger from McDonald's or whatever. So, demographically, we like good disposable income, cities that will have a fairly large demographic of, I'll say younger, and I put that in quotes because that's all relative, but kind of that 20 or 25 to 55 ish is kind of our key. Like, we get up in the 70s, 80s, like our that fast casual model just doesn't resonate with them as much versus like a sit down. And same thing with like more affluent guests. They may want more of a sit down versus more of an order at the counter type of place. So, but we're looking for high density, good weekday, daytime traffic. Cause weekends are going to be busy almost no matter where you put these things, because everyone's eating brunch on the weekends, right? Cause they're off work. But for the weekday traffic, you want hospitals, hotels, tourism, office, good co-tenancy, things, that good active, corridor where people are going.
Okay,
So
so the key thing is, since it's going to do well anywhere in the weekends, the key thing is finding a location that's going to do great during the week.
That's yes. And, other supplemental income and sales, like with catering, we've really grown our catering a lot in the past couple of years, where, some weeks we're 10% of our sales are catering, and we're able to, that, those don't take up any seats, and those are catering's typically on the weekdays. So at least probably 95% of ours is. So that, along with a good online ordering, like loyalty program on top of third party, like, you're then able to stack these on top of each other and really start building sales on the weekday. But yeah, weekends are pretty crazy. About 50% of our sales are coming on the weekends. So you also have to have a big enough space where you don't have people just waiting in line for an hour. So you got to be really strategic with how many tables you can get, and the size of the dining room and all that. So it's a lot to manage and juggle.
Okay. Chad, what about the franchisees themselves? Who's the type of person that really thrives in your system?
Yeah, great question. We have only brought on, at least to date, seasoned multi-unit, multi-brand operators. I think, are we going to continue that forever and ever? If we want to grow, it's quite honestly going to be hard to maintain that person. But if they have good business acumen, maybe they have retail experience, they're used to building teams. I think if they can surround themselves with people that do know the restaurant business, then they will be okay. Again, I created a concept, never having worked in a restaurant before. Like, it can be done. It takes a special person, I believe, that's really going to be dedicated to it. But to answer your question, especially since we don't have national brand recognition.
Sure.
You have to have someone that is going to be hit the pavement, go out, market, local store marketing, getting involved in the community, and be a very hands-on operator. One of our franchise groups, they actually have a more of an owner operator model, which I think, you take a page out of the Chick-fil-A book, the Texas Roadhouse book, where they're allowing essentially their GMs to buy in to their store. And just that sense of ownership really gives that person, I mean, they are technically an owner. And so they're going to treat it, and it may only be 10% or 15%, but they're going to treat it so much differently than just a higher general manager. And so we are starting to look at our own corporate stores and JV stores, what that general manager looks like and what their title is, and how can they maybe earn a better title, maybe like an operating manager, operating partner. They don't have equity because that complicates things if we're doing it now, but maybe they're able to earn a bigger bonus, and maybe they get their name on the door that says that title. So something to give them at least what feels like ownership and a bigger bonus, which they can control largely based on how hard they work and how well they control their costs.
What about the investment range to open a location, and how big, what's the footprint usually of a location?
Yeah, the footprint is around 3,000 square feet. We try to get end caps with patios, just to, obviously get some free rent. Rent is just continues to go up. And as we're looking at bigger cities, it's just eye opening what people are charging right now.
Yes, for sure. And the investment range?
Yeah, the investment range, I don't have the exact dollar amounts memorized, but around the 800s to about 1.3. And that's just basically assuming you don't get any tenant improvement dollars from the landlord, which we're typically getting a pretty good amount. That's 3 months operating capital, 3 months of rent, franchise fee, build out all your FF&E. I mean, that's, as I say, all the things that the lawyers make us put in there.
Of course. Yep. Well, you gotta be protected.
You do.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk a little bit about vision for the future. Where do you see the brand growing over the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, we've been focused on kind of call it Texas and North, maybe up to the Dakotas. Sorry, South and North Dakota, and then over East. Though I'm probably be a little timid or skeptical of like going into like the true New England area, just because I think the bagel kind of dominates there for breakfast. The South, we have our biscuits and they have bagels. So yeah, I mean, we're looking at kind of the Midwest, Southeast is kind of the primary target. And that's where we're targeting franchisees. Again, I know you guys are in Florida, would love to be in that state, but
we're ready for you, Chad. We're ready.
There's plenty of white space. I mean, you take kind of those Southeast, Midwest. I mean, you could have 100 of these like fairly easily, and then just can kind of continue to grow from there. So that's where we're currently targeting.
Okay. And tell me about why now is a great time for somebody to join the brand and be a franchisee at Biscuit Belly?
Yeah, well, I think because we are small, people can have input. We are constantly talking with our franchisees on a weekly basis, and they really do have a lot of good ideas, and they have their own connections that can help us with our cost of goods. And, maybe they have a vendor that they typically work with and we can get better pricing. So we can help each other out in that regards. So, if you are looking for something new and you're not just looking to open another Wingstop or, Taco Bell or whatever. And, we like to call ourselves craft casual. So we're primarily scratch based. So if they're more interested in making things from scratch and have pride in that and have pride in the service that we want to provide, that's going to be far greater than, a more traditional QSR, rehydrate your refried beans, with some water, keep them hot. So, I mean, I think it's also a very unique concept in the fact that our menu you can't really get our menu anywhere else. And so again, trying not to, the concept was founded and started to give, guests and diners a non-bacon, eggs, and waffles or bacon, eggs, and pancakes type of experience, and a type of menu. So it's a very unique menu. Again, For the boozy brunch lovers, we have cocktails. For the coffee lovers, we have, our espresso and a menu that you're really not going to be able to find anywhere else. So it can definitely be a very intriguing thing to open up a very different concept that's new and you can help really grow and decide the future of it. I think it's very compelling.
Yeah, well, it's always special when you're one of the earlier adopter franchisees to come in, and we never forget our franchisees, especially the early ones. So, and they will play a special part in the brand. Very nice. Chad, if someone was interested in learning more about the franchise, where would they go?
So probably our website, which is biscuitbellyfranchise.com. And that's got, we have video testimonials from our franchisees on there. It's got AV data. It's got cost of goods, labor data, some numbers from our item 19. And yeah, it's, you can submit an inquiry and we can talk.
All right. Very good. I got one last question for you. I call this the franchise tip jar. So a little piece of advice here. What would you say to other maybe emerging founders on maybe what's one of the most underrated skills that a franchisor needs to have that's maybe not talked about as much? What have you found?
Yeah, man, there's a bunch. Patience. I mean, there's a whole lot. I mean, we could talk about capital. I mean, it's the long game, as you said, Frank. Like you don't be selling deals just because you're running out of money, because this is like a marriage. But yeah, I'd say patience, and patience and finding the right franchisees to join the system, patience and finding the right real estate, at least in our world. Yeah. Patience, which I'm not a very patient. Patience. I am not a very patient person. I'm like, all right, what's next? But we've seen what happens when you go too fast and get, a little, I won't say greedy, but get a little cocky.
Yeah. You start getting some wins under your belt and you think you can't lose, right?
Yeah.
And then the franchise gods bat you down. They knock it down and put you back, put you in check.
Yeah.
No, it's. I agree with you. I think that learning patience, first of all, as an entrepreneur is difficult because we got to where we did because we weren't very patient, that we were go-getters and aggressive and making changes. But you're right. I think it is something that we have to learn to do to be a really effective franchisor, to be patient with our franchisees. Not everybody operates at the same level, skill level, or even has the same aspirations. And we have to be patient with our employees and just overall with our goals. And I think that's great advice, Chad. Thank you so much for being on today's show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's fun. Appreciate you having me on.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fiume, or Emerging Franchise Group, LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.